When the history of Africa is written not by those who enslaved us, but by those who rose from the chains, there will be a name written in bold, burning letters, Ibrahim Traore, not because he sat on a golden throne, but because he stood with a spine of steel. Not because he dined with presidents, but because he broke bread with the people. In an age of puppets, he dared to be a lion. In a time of silence, he roared. And in a continent asleep, he became the thunder that woke us up. Africa does not need leaders who beg. Africa needs lions who lead. And in the young fire of Burkina Faso, Africa has found a flame the enemies of progress cannot extinguish. This is not just a man, this is a movement. This is Ibrahim Traore. He dares to dream where others bow to fear. In an era where mediocrity is rewarded and cowardice is dressed in suits of diplomacy, he stands tall not because he was taught to, but because his soul refuses to kneel. His is not the kind of leadership that seeks permission from the oppressor before speaking truth. His is the bold, unfiltered voice of a continent that has been denied its tongue for too long. In him, Africa sees not a boy who grew into power, but a man who rose from pain, from struggle, from a history soaked in betrayal, and yet remained unshaken by the weight of hopelessness. Across this vast continent, fear has been weaponized. From the boardrooms in foreign capitals to the dusty roads of forgotten villages, we have been told to wait, wait for aid, wait for help, wait for change, but this man refused to wait. He looked around and saw the chains weren't just on our limbs, they were wrapped around our minds, silencing our courage, numbing our urgency. And so he broke them not by shouting, but by acting, not by asking, but by leading. In a world where many leaders are chosen to serve masters in distant lands, he chose instead to serve the soil beneath his feet. He understands that dreaming for Africa is not a fantasy, it is a responsibility. And unlike those who fear dreaming because they fear disappointment, he dreams with his eyes open and his fists clenched. He dreams of schools where children no longer learn the lies of their conquerors. He dreams of hospitals where the dignity of the sick is preserved. He dreams of lands returned to the people, of resources no longer auctioned to the highest foreign bidder, and of a people no longer apologizing for demanding justice. The problem in Africa has never been the absence of vision, it has been the absence of courage. So many have spoken beautiful words in air-conditioned conference rooms, but when the time came to bleed for their people, they ran. But this man did not run, he did not retreat. He advanced even when the path was littered with enemies, with threats, with danger. He advanced because the fire in his chest was louder than the bullets aimed at his back. He advanced because he knew that if he did not rise, the next generation would drown in the silence of the present. He is not fearless because he has never felt fear. He is fearless because he decided that fear will never make his decisions. He does not tremble at sanctions, nor does he bow to pressure from global forces who write peace with one hand and supply weapons with the other. He sees through their games, and he calls them out, not in whispers, but in thunderous declarations. And when they attempt to isolate him, they only reveal their fear of a free African mind, because when one African stands up without fear, millions remember that they were never meant to kneel. He is the kind of leader who does not count how many enemies surround him. He counts how many truths he can speak before they try to silence him. And even then, he knows, silence cannot erase conviction. They can ban his words from headlines, but they cannot stop them from becoming a movement in the hearts of the people. They can block his face from television, but they cannot stop his spirit from shining in every youth who dares to believe that Africa is not cursed, it is calling. In every word he speaks there is defiance, not the defiance of rebellion for rebellion's sake, but the righteous defiance of a man who knows his people have been lied to for generations, a man who knows that the comfort of complicity will never outweigh the cost of betrayal. He is not interested in being remembered as a leader who made compromises with colonial shadows. He is determined to be remembered as the leader who made them irrelevant. When young people see him, they do not just see power, they see permission. Permission to rise, permission to question, permission to reclaim, and that is the most dangerous thing to the old world order, that a new generation might see in him not just a president, not just a soldier, but a mirror. A mirror reflecting what we all could become if we stopped bowing to fear and started building the dream, and that is why he matters, that is why they tried to discredit him, that is why they fear his name. Because he reminds Africa that the age of begging is over and the era of becoming has begun. His leadership is not power, it is purpose. In a time where the title of president has become a crown worn by those who serve foreign interests more than they serve their own people, he has redefined what it means to lead. He did not enter the corridors of power to build an empire of self-interest. He stepped into that space with a mission, with a burden, with a clarity that echoes not from textbooks, but from the cries of the oppressed. His voice is not the voice of a ruler detached from reality. It is the voice of a son of the soil, one who has tasted the bitterness of injustice and chosen to fight so others will taste freedom. He understands that real leadership is not measured by how many men salute you, but by how many lives are lifted because of your decisions. He knows that sitting in a palace while the streets are flooded with hunger is not governance, it is betrayal. And so he moves not with arrogance, but with accountability. He does not see himself above the people, he sees himself as their shield, their voice, their hope. That is why when he speaks, even the silent listen. When he moves, even the cowards find courage, because in him is a rare spirit, a man who leads not with force, but with fire. And what is that fire? It is the unwavering desire to see dignity restored in every African face. He does not govern for applause. He governs for transformation. You will not see him chasing the approval of foreign diplomats, for he knows that true legitimacy is not granted by outside forces, it is earned through sacrifice, through service, through sweat. He walks among his people, not to be praised, but to understand, to connect, to remain grounded in the reality that too many leaders forget the moment they step into office. This man has made it clear. Leadership is not about luxury, it is about legacy. He chooses to drive simplicity, to wear modesty, to speak plainly, because he knows that symbolism matters. In a continent where leadership has often been confused with lavishness, he strips power back to its essence, responsibility. He refuses to build monuments while the people starve. He refuses to sign treaties that serve outsiders while his nation bleeds. And that refusal is not arrogance, it is clarity. Clarity that Africa can no longer afford to be led by men who prefer foreign praise over local progress. This is a man who wakes not to expand his own influence, but to expand opportunity for his people. He is not concerned with how the world perceives him, he is concerned with how his people survive. When he speaks of sovereignty, it is not as a slogan. It is as a promise that his people will never again be used as pawns in a global game of economic exploitation. A promise that the nation's destiny will be decided by its own sons and daughters, not by think tanks thousands of miles away. He understands that the greatest power a leader has is the power to awaken others. And so, he is not building a government of yes, men, he is building a generation of thinkers, builders, protectors. He challenges the youth not to follow him blindly, but to surpass him boldly. He reminds the old that tradition is not stagnation, and reminds the powerful that without the people, power is empty. In his example, we are reminded that leadership is not about being served, it is about serving even when it hurts. In boardrooms where deals are made in secret and Africa's wealth is signed away with a smile, he has become the voice that says no, no to exploitation, no to dependency, no to the manipulation that comes dressed as diplomacy. And in doing so, he has shown that integrity in leadership is not a myth, it is a decision to carry the weight of truth even when it isolates you, a decision to fight for justice even when it costs you friends, a decision to stay rooted in purpose even when the winds of pressure try to uproot your convictions. His leadership is the rejection of politics as performance. It is the resurrection of politics as sacrifice. He does not need to remind the world of his titles. His actions are loud enough. He does not seek to intimidate with his position. He seeks to inspire with his principles. Because in the end, he knows that the measure of a leader is not how long he reigns, but how deeply he plants the seeds of a nation that will thrive long after his time. And that is why he leads not to be remembered, but to make remembering unnecessary, because the lives he touches will carry forward a freedom too powerful to be forgotten. He is building a nation, not begging for one. In an age where too many of our leaders have turned the dignity of governance into a desperate hunt for foreign approval, he has chosen a different path. He does not travel the world with a bowl in one hand and empty promises in the other. He does not wait for grants that come with invisible chains. He does not applaud when they throw crumbs from tables built with African gold. Instead, he turns inward toward the strength of his people, toward the spirit of the land, and toward the raw power of a continent that has been robbed more than rescued. His leadership is not a plea for validation, it is a declaration of self-reliance. When he looks at Africa, he does not see poverty, he sees potential buried under years of misdirection. He does not speak the language of aid, he speaks the language of ownership. He has not come to lead by begging for assistance, he has come to awaken a people who have been told for too long that survival is the only dream they're allowed to have. He walks among the ruins of corruption and global exploitation, and he does not despair. He builds, slowly, painfully, but surely, he builds, brick by brick, voice by voice, law by law. He is laying the foundation of a nation that refuses to outsource its future. This is a man who understands that independence is not a holiday, it is a mindset. It is not about lowering the foreign flag, it is about raising the African spirit. He knows that true sovereignty means being able to feed your own people, educate your own children, and defend your own borders without asking for permission or validation. And so, he does not run to global summits hoping for applause. He remains rooted in his country, turning attention to the farms, the classrooms, the factories, the places where real change happens. He knows that freedom cannot be borrowed. It must be built. Too many have grown used to dependency. The moment a problem arises, they stretch their hands to distant lands. They beg for loans wrapped in debts, policies wrapped in control, and partnerships wrapped in betrayal. But he stands before the world and says, "We are not your subjects. We are not your projects. We are your equals." His refusal to beg is not pride, it is principle. It is a refusal to accept that the only path forward for Africa is one paved by others. It is a rejection of the lie that we cannot stand unless someone holds us up. This man has refused to govern with a script written by foreign powers. He is rewriting that script in the ink of African reality. He is choosing to use local talent instead of imported advisors, local products instead of imported luxuries, and local solutions instead of borrowed models that fail to reflect our context. And in doing so, he is not just governing a nation, he is restoring a people's faith in themselves. He is reminding them that they are not helpless spectators in their own land, but powerful authors of their future. He does not hide behind economic theories created in universities that have never felt the African sun. He steps into the streets, into the markets, into the villages, and he listens. He does not plan development in isolation, he co-creates. hates it with those who live the reality, and that is why when he speaks, his words do not sound foreign. They sound familiar because they rise from the soil, not from boardrooms. His leadership is grounded in truth, and that truth is that no foreign aid can replace local vision, and no foreign plan can save a country that refuses to believe in itself. He challenges the youth to stop chasing visas and start chasing visions. He challenges the farmers to see themselves as guardians of sovereignty. He challenges the educators to shape minds not for export, but for empowerment. And he challenges the nation to see beyond survival, to see greatness not as a gift to be given, but as a muscle to be built. This man is not building for headlines. He is building for history. They call him radical because he refuses to bow. They call him dangerous because he refuses to obey. But what he truly is necessary. Necessary for an Africa that is tired of being pitied, tired of being managed, tired of being told who it is. He is proof that we do not need to ask the world to fix us. We need only to believe that we can fix ourselves and then begin. He is building not with fear, but with faith, not with dependency, but with determination, not with borrowed dreams, but with a vision crafted from within. And in that vision lies the rebirth of a continent. They fear him not because he carries weapons, but because he carries the truth. In a world built on deception, where colonialism has simply changed its mask, it is not the bullet they fear most, it is the voice that awakens. And his voice has become a storm. They call him defiant, but what is defiance in the face of injustice if not duty? What is resistance to exploitation if not survival? He has become the embodiment of that question they hoped Africa would never ask again: what if we stopped obeying their lies? He has seen through their polished vocabulary terms like democracy, investment, humanitarian aid, all designed to sound noble while hiding chains. He has read their agreements dressed as partnerships, only to find traps hidden in every clause. He has watched how they praise freedom in speeches, then undermine it in actions, and so he no longer pretends, he no longer plays their game, he exposes it, and in doing so he tears through the illusion that has kept Africa quiet for decades. He dares to point a finger at the very structure of global injustice, and that makes him dangerous not because he threatens violence, but because he threatens to wake up a sleeping continent. They cannot understand how a man so young could possess such clarity. But that clarity did not come from books funded by Western donors. It came from pain. It came from watching his people suffer while the world looked away. It came from standing in villages forgotten by the state, in schools with no books, in hospitals with no medicine, while knowing that the wealth to fix it all was being flown out in silence. He did not need a foreign lecture to know what injustice looks like. He saw it in the mirror of his people's struggle, and he decided to become the answer no one was willing to give. And so he speaks not as a puppet, not as a diplomat in a designer suit, but as a warrior in a system that never wanted him to exist. They try to mock his simplicity, but that simplicity is his strength. They try to label him extreme, but extremism is silence in the face of oppression, not the courage to name it. He is not afraid of their sanctions, because he knows that sanctions are not tools of peace, they are weapons of economic war. He is not intimidated by their threats, because he knows that the real threat is a generation that continues to bow to injustice without question. He challenges the very architecture of global power. He questions why African resources are used to build foreign skyscrapers while African children sit under trees to learn. He asks why foreign militaries claim to fight terrorism but leave behind more chaos than peace. He asks why those who once enslaved now claim to be saviors, and the moment he asks, they panic because in truth they have no answer that can survive honesty. That is why they try to silence him, because his voice is not just loud, it is accurate. But he does not speak only to expose. He speaks to ignite. He speaks to remind Africans that fear is the last chain, and once it is broken, nothing can stop a continent that decides to rise. He speaks to the youth not as victims of a broken system, but as the builders of a new one. He speaks to the women not as statistics in reports, but as the backbone of a continent whose strength has been ignored. He speaks to the elders not with blame, but with a call to remember who we were before we were colonized, before we were redefined, before we were robbed. This man's mission is not personal glory, it is continental awakening. He understands that empires collapse not when they are attacked, but when the lies that uphold them are exposed. He has decided to pull back the curtain, to reveal the puppeteers behind the poverty, to disrupt the comfortable silence that has allowed global injustice to flourish. His resistance is not just national, it is symbolic. It is a message to all Africans. We do not have to live in fear. We do not have to accept the narrative written for us. We can write our own. That is why they attack his name. That is why they distort his words, because they know the power of an idea whose time has come. They know that once truth catches fire, it cannot be stopped by bullets or bribes. They know that once people learn to question, they never forget how to see. He is not just challenging the world, he is challenging Africa to believe again. To remember that dignity is not a favor, it is a birthright. And so he stands not as a servant of the global order, but as a sentinel of African sovereignty. He does not whisper in the corridors of the powerful, he shouts from the heart of the people. And when history looks back, it will not remember the applause of the oppressors. It will remember the courage of the few who spoke when it was dangerous, who stood when it was costly, who led not for comfort, but for conviction.